Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and you want to know about how we're helping other accredited investors keep more of their income, go to firstgencp.com/going long.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And yes, I'm your host, Billy Keels, and I'm back for another solo episode, which is we're going to dig into something really interesting. It's going to be quick. And I just want to thank you once again. Thank you for continuing to screenshot, to share, to attract more people to the Going Long podcast family. It's absolutely fantastic. You continue to tag us. It's actually kind of fun getting out there and chatting back and forth with you. We really appreciate you for doing that. And also, too, if you've been leaving your honest written reviews as well as ratings, thank you for doing that. It continues to help us move up the charts on the top 1.5% of podcasts globally, which is awesome. And if you haven't had a chance to do that yet and you want to, well, go ahead, do that. You can leave us a nice honest written review as well as rating. We'll appreciate that. You'll also be bringing more family members to the Going Long podcast. So also too, for those of you who are looking for some of the previous episodes, just go to firstgencp.com/podcasts. You can find every single version of the podcast that we've ever done, video version, audio version. You can get the transcripts, all that kind of cool stuff. Once again, firstgencp.com/podcasts. And I do want to recognize one of our honest written reviews, and we're going to read that. It's going to be heard across 40 plus countries, which is actually pretty awesome. Today comes from Stallion Golf and says, amazing interviewer. Billy is a true professional who works super hard to produce amazing content. He's abundant and curious and makes the interview interesting and relevant. Well done. So thank you very much for that, Stallion Golf. And actually, it's a total team effort here. So they just let me get out here and chat with you. So that's the team is doing really, really awesome, and really appreciate the team making all of this relevant and helping each one of you that are listening to the podcast and making it right. So listen, let's jump into this thing that as we get closer and closer to the end of the year, one of the things that you're probably starting to think to yourself is, hey, listen, what are the goals going to look like? And what do I want 2023 to look like? And all this kind of fun stuff. And one of the things I just want to share with you as I start to reflect on, because I hear this kind of quite frequently. You start thinking about what were all the things that you did in the past and what do you want to be able to do? And you start to think about your goals and your SMART goals, as I mentioned before, and you think, well, you know what? What was like the reason for your success? Like, how did you get to the success? Or I'll ask myself, like, how did I get to certain levels of achievement throughout the year? And I hear this question quite frequently and think a lot of times we get really focused on how do we want to be successful? And we think so much about the success that we forget about how we got to the success. So if you start to ask yourself the question like, all right, well, how did I actually get there? That's one of the things that I typically want to ask myself. And I start thinking about, championship teams. And I think about, okay, well, this particular team won the title. And, what was their secret sauce for success? How did they actually do it? Or I start thinking about a specific investment opportunity. And I think to myself, all right, well, I got this specific business opportunity or investment opportunity. And how was I able to create the highest return? Or I start to place the return as the most important criteria. Maybe there are other criteria that come into place. But the fact of the matter is, many times we get so far down the road. I know that myself, I've been in this predicament. And this is one of the things that happens with people like me who are recovering perfectionists, because I'm always asking myself, how do I get to the end game? And I know it's important to work those things back. But if you think about the one single most important factor of generating or creating successful outcomes or creating success, there's really only one, right? Because you can get into so many different complicated things, and I've done this before and I've overcomplicated things, but I want to share with you literally what is the single biggest factor for being able to be successful or generate successful outcomes? Are you ready for it? Are you sure? Get your pen and paper out. Here's the thing. In order to get to successful outcomes, you have to start. I had to start, right? In order to be able to get to a point where I was no longer in the corporate world and I'm still in my 40s, I had to start at some point. Now, I started a decade ago and I worked a lot for a decade. But not only did I start, I stayed consistent. I didn't do it once and then stop and not do it again. I started and I consistently kept doing it. I made mistakes along the way. I learned from those mistakes. I pivoted. And then I built on top of that. I started learning different things. I started learning about the difference between active income, passive income, how I was generating that income, ways that I could access more liquidity through different vehicles, surrounding myself with people that knew more than me, asking different questions, getting different results. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, I started. And that is the single most important criteria to being able to get to successful outcomes, in my opinion, right? So let me give you a very concrete example. This is the Going Long podcast. We're like at 270 plus podcast episodes at this point in time, right? If you go back to episode 1 of the podcast, I got started. I was nervous. I was fumbling. I was tumbling. I was dumbling. All of those things. Now, today, I believe, and based on what you're saying, because we're in the top 1.5% of podcasts, because in the beginning, we definitely were not, we've gotten better, becoming the best version of what we can do, being first place in our category, right? Because that's what we're working on. We continue to work on adding value to you and being the best version of this podcast that we can be. But none of this would have happened had we not started 270 some odd episodes ago. So, like I said, I like to keep these simple. I like to make them practical. And if you are overthinking things, I'm a recovering perfectionist. Trust me, I've been there. I understand that. I know what you're going through. I started. Once you start, take consistent action. That is the single most important action that you can take, in my opinion, to start to become successful, creating successful outcomes. If you don't start, if I would have never started the podcast, you and I would never be connecting here. So, once again, like I said, I want to keep this brief. I want to keep it simple. And what is the single most important factor to creating successful outcomes, to being successful? It's to get started and stay consistent. So, speaking of which, I know we talked about this before, and I know I've mentioned it before, but one of the areas as I started looking in terms of investing was understanding, and it took me a really, really long time, way too long, to understand this, the different types of income, the different vehicles that I could have used to actually be freer. Imagine if I would have seen that. I could have been free of the corporate world in my 30s. Well, I didn't start until my late 30s. So anyway, I want you to be able to take advantage of the mistakes that I made, the lessons that I've learned. If you want to do that, especially if you're an accredited investor and you're looking to, as you're planning for next year, you're planning on doing things differently. You're planning on getting educated, surrounding yourself with accountability partners, and also taking action. Go to firstgencp.com/going long. Really brief guide. It's going to share with you how you can understand different types of income, how you can begin to plan on creating consistent income and also keeping more of your income so you can do the things that you want to do with the people that you want to do with and when you want to do it. While you're downloading the guide at firstgencp.com/going long, I'll be here preparing for the next conversation, getting ready for the end of the year. So once again, firstgencp.com/going long. I want you to go out. I want you to make it a great day. And thank you very much. Trust that you enjoyed today's conversation. And once again, today's conversation was sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and want to find out more about how we're helping accredited investors to gain their personal freedom even faster, go to firstgencp.com/going long.